Hello my dear friends, welcome back to another Star Wars video. It is I coming at you once again, your favourite galactic hostess, Star Wars Meg. And oh boy do I have a very exciting video for you today. I had the immense privilege of speaking with Michael Stackpole, an absolute Star Wars legend, best known for his expanded universe novels, the X-Wing series, my favourite being Rogue Squadron, Jedi, and so many others. Now, a couple of years ago, Patty Jenkins, who's making her own Rogue Squadron in movie form, and no, it's not cancelled, sought out Michael's advice, so naturally I asked him about it. We also spoke about George Lucas, Mara Jade, the current state of Star Wars, and so much more. Tomorrow, I'll be sharing the truth about Mara Jade. But today, my dear friends, enjoy the clip about Disney Canon versus Expanded Universe and Rogue Squadron. The movie by Patty Jenkins was announced in 2020, but there have been some really weird updates, some saying it's been cancelled, others saying it's being put on hold. Is there anything you know, anything you can reveal today?
Yeah, basically the communication that I've had with Patty Jenkins has been absolutely cursory, just exchanging a couple of notes back and forth. That really is the extent of it. But in the public statements that Patty Jenkins, made, she was one highly complimentary of the X-Wing novels, which was very kind of her. And the other thing which I saw and I thought was a great idea was that she wanted to use the X-Wing novels and their history as basically the foundation of her creating the next generation of Rogue Squadron, which, given the timing of when that movie might be set, would make perfect sense. So the possibility is there of some of the characters out of the novels might, in fact, aged up appropriately, might show up in that movie.
So do you know when it was set?
My assumption that it was going to be in the post-9 era. I think there was a press release within the last 12 months that talked about how Patty Jenkins was still working on the script. I know nothing, which is fairly standard for us writers out here. We just have to wait like everybody else.
Since it was post episode 9, how did you feel about Dennis Lawson returning as Wedge?
It was nice to see Dennis back. I would have hoped that they would have given Wedge a little bit more to do. I'm going to be pulling for Wedge no matter what. Do I see Dennis Lawson continuing if there were a movie to go beyond? That just depends upon when they decide to set it and what they decide to do.
I want to ask you a very honest question. How do you feel about the way Lucasfilm decanonized the expanded universe? There's a big debate amongst fans. Some say it was never canon to begin with. Others say canon is not dictated, it's established. What do you say about it?
Well, I think, first of all, when we were writing those books, we were told we were writing canon. So at that time, we were creating canon. And so anybody who says they were never canon is just incorrect. When you look at the universe going over to Disney and Disney wanting to work from there, the EU books were always going to have to be decanonized. I mean, first of all, we killed Chewie. And Chewie is a very visual character. He is a character that their species have a long life. So, of course, they're going to want him back in the movies. And if for nothing else, they're going to invalidate the EU things. What I always clung to and what I always saw and thought was important, and it's proved so as we go on, in that same press release where Disney said, this stuff is no longer canon, we're not going to be bound by it, was how they worded it in the press release. They did say that they would continue to mine the EU for inspiration, for ideas. And in fact, they have gone ahead and done that. I mean, that's the reason that we've seen Grand Admiral Thrawn come back. That's the reason that Corran and his mother showed up in Obi-Wan. This is the reason why little tidbits out of all those EU books, be it Worlds, be it Creatures, be it Cortosis Ore, that's why all of these things have showed up. And I think it's also important to remember that movies are a different medium than novels. So there were always going to be differences. And even if things were not shot by shot of what you saw in the EU books, everybody who's working on those movies grew up reading Tim's books, reading my books, reading Aaron's books. And a lot of the sense that we brought to the stories, I think, still shows up in the TV shows. So even though we don't have a direct influence in terms of something we did's being adapted, I think how we told those stories and what we were looking for contributes a lot to what we're getting these days.
Do you feel Disney Star Wars has made them caricatures? Are they watered down? Or have they done justice to those characters? What do you think?
Oh, I don't. I mean, Corran, they aged him correctly. Corran's the same age as Luke. So in Obi-Wan, he's basically aged correctly, and could very easily turn into the Corran we all know and love. I don't see a problem with that. Grand Admiral Thrawn. Thrawn is always a tricky character. I remember the first time I was doing writing Thrawn in a story that Tim and I split in half, and each of us wrote our parts. Thrawn is a really tough character to get right. And this is one of the things which becomes tough when you're translating from one medium to another. When you're doing narrative fiction, you're able to get under the character's skin and inside their head so that the readers have this intimate knowledge of Grand Admiral Thrawn and things which are going on in those stories, which doesn't show up in the same way when you're doing the comics or when you're doing movies or the animated features. How people are going to interpret what's going on with the characters, that's going to be highly personal and is going to just depend upon how they saw them. How do I feel about what Disney has done? Look, there are some things that Disney has done that I probably wouldn't have done that way. And there were things that they did that I never would have thought about doing because that's just not the type of story that I tell. With a lot of the projects, I have enjoyed them. I've enjoyed aspects to them. But that's really no more or no less how I react to movies and TV shows in general. So there's nothing that I've seen that I absolutely, absolutely hate. Are there things I would have done differently? Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Well, I have to ask you, what's been your favorite Disney Star Wars project?
Just was Rogue One a Disney Star Wars project?
It was, yeah.
Okay, then we'll go with Rogue One. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed Obi-Wan. I thought that was fun. I think one of the things that's really weird, and you're getting to see it with a lot of the Disney stuff, is them putting together these 6 and 8 episode miniseries. My take on watching TV and TV miniseries, especially coming out of England and Europe, is that people over there are much better at doing these short series than anybody in America is. And as a result, I think some of those short series have had miscues because they've had, an episode more than they ought to, or they needed 2 or 3 more episodes to actually flesh them out. So if I'm going to be charitable, it's, Disney and the California folks working through how this stuff ought to be put together. And if I'm not charitable, then, they're messing it up for everybody.
So what do you want to see from Disney Star Wars? What kind of projects would you want to make? If they came to you and said, we want your input, what would you want them to do?
Well, I think that in the era that they're looking at, where they're, and this is where we get to Patty Jenkins and Rogue Squadron. As you're looking at that, would it be fun to be able to explore Rogue Squadron and do a little bit more of the military science fiction angle of things? Absolutely, because I think that is, at least I find it really thrilling the way they do it on the screen, and we know they know how to do the special effects. At the same time, Jedi has a piece of my soul. And being able to do a project which explored more of the Jedi ethos, and look, if I'm going to make it really, really personal, exploring the whole idea of how Corellian Jedi differ from the mainstream Jedi, and being able to play with that and make it a little bit more of an intimate story, whether it was set in the prequel era or we were going to look at the Halcyons say back in the High Republic, or even in the period, some other period around that, I would just absolutely eat that up. That would just be a lot of fun as far as I'm concerned.